Today I'm building a D&D room with a secret door. Why? Because I am addicted to that moment when my players gasp around the table. The challenge, it has to be a simple mechanism. No complicated engineering, no expensive parts, just something any level 1 crafter could make.
In order to build a secret door in a room, I first need, well, a room. I started with flour foam floor covered in Mod Podge, mixed with acrylic soup and a little water. Once it was dried, I glued it to a wooden surface. After sealing the gap with some more acrylic soup, I began the tedious process of painting white prime, then main color gray, a black wash, and final touches of white dry brushing.
Once the floor was finished, I made the walls the same way. Unfortunately, flour foam turned out to be not ideal for a secret door mechanism. First of all, because the friction was way too high for it to open with a simple twist of a knob. Second of all, because once I cut a door shape in the foam, it was so obvious that the foam was cut. There was no hiding it. Now, I don't mind if there's a hint that something is hidden in there. After all, it is a well-known fact that the happiest creature in the world is a D&D player who thinks he outsmarted his DM. But this was plain bad. So I did what I always do when I reach the limits of my creative abilities, which, admittedly, aren't all that far away. I looked for a 3D printing solution. There were some pretty good free files to download out there, but there was a specific design that actually matched what I had in mind, what I was intending to do. So I caved and spent the outrageous amount of 150 euros. Besides, if I print a whole bunch of those, that would actually lower the price per unit, which actually means I'm saving money. This is how economics works, I'm pretty sure.
The first wall was easy. I simply glued it onto a wooden backing. The second wall was a little trickier since part of it needed to swing open. I couldn't glue a backing behind that section. Instead, I cut away the wood behind about 1.5 wall sections, leaving just enough room to add a flexible hinge. For the hinge, I used the most valuable material in any crafter's workshop: random leftovers. In this case, it was a strip of self-adhesive felt. I painted the walls to match the floor. Then I made sure all the parts matched, because nothing kills the illusion quite like twisting the knob and nothing happens.
To operate the mechanism, I decided to use a torch. Originally, I wanted to use an animal head, but I couldn't find any printable models I liked. At one point, I even considered buying a plastic toy and simply cutting the head off, but then I realized that would require leaving the house and interacting with other people. So, the torch it is!
After printing it, I started painting, got distracted halfway through to punch a hole in the back, and only then went back to finish painting. A completely normal workflow, if you have ADHD. To mount the torch on the wall, I used an eye pin. By grabbing the loop with a pair of flush cutters and giving it a half twist, I turned it into a tiny hook. Once the wall was glued into place, I glued the two pieces together, making sure not to get any glue on the walls so the torch could still rotate freely. On the back of the second wall, I made 2 more holes for eye pins, making sure not to go all the way through. One in the door itself and one in the stationary part of the wall. With those in place, I could finally glue the second wall down. Now came the moment of truth. Would my brilliant engineering masterpiece actually align with the laws of physics? Well, it did not. I hooked the rubber band onto the door, ran it through the second eye pin, and nothing. The door didn't open. It didn't take me long to realize my mistake. The rubber band was pulling the door sideways instead of away from the door, which was a little embarrassing considering I've been opening doors successfully for several decades now. I'd like to think I've gained some proficiency in that particular area. Thankfully, the fix was Pretty simple, I glued a small wooden block to redirect the pull. Since the door needed to be open in both directions, I tied a piece of thread to the eye pin on the door and attached a rubber band to each side of it. One rubber band would pull the door open and the other would pull it shut. Unfortunately, even the smallest rubber band I had was way too big. The tension wasn't strong enough to keep it closed. So I did what every crafter does when faced with a problem. I wandered around the house, picking on other people's stuff, and there it was, an old bracelet making kit filled with the tiniest rubber bands. Jackpot! After spending a completely unreasonable amount of time choosing a color, even though I knew perfectly well no one would ever see it, I finally installed it. Now it was time for the final test. To be honest, I was about 50% convinced this entire mechanism was about to embarrass me on camera, but somehow it actually worked. All that was left to do now was add some furnitures to my room and give it a few beauty shots.